Should you just eat one meal a day if you are trying to drop some weight? Well, I wouldn't, but you can. Hey, it's AD Roundtree. Welcome to this, your Tuesday edition of the show. Yeah, your Tuesday. Like every day that goes by, that's another step that you have taken forward. You're doing awesome. Hang in there. You got this. You are a badass. And if you need something, if there's anything I can do for you to make your Tuesday better, hit me up. I'm here with you. I'm here for you. At ADSXE. It's where you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at ADSXE. Put it in your phone now in case you need it later. So, you and I have talked about this bit before, but it was not my intention to make a health and fitness podcast when I started doing this podcast. I started doing the podcast for a couple different reasons. First and foremost, I needed to keep our conversations going to keep my sanity. I started doing these podcasts, if you're just joining me for the first time, when I was in my father's hospital room in Kosovo. He'd had a medical emergency that caused me to go halfway around the world. It was a trip that was supposed to take 3 days, and every step of the journey became more and more difficult and more complicated, and I wound up being in a foreign country looking after my father in hospital for about a month and a half. And during that time, my time on your radio, something I've been doing for the last 17 years, came to an end. And I realized something. I realized not only did I miss you, but also these conversations that you and I have been having for all these years, they get me through the high times, the low times, and all the times in between. They are a big part of what has kept me sane. And I realized from my own sort of sense of well-being and ability to get through, I needed to keep the conversation with you going. And so I decided I'd start this podcast where you and I talked about the things that were on our minds, the things that we were struggling with, the things that we were facing. If you have a problem, if you have something that seems insurmountable, if you have something that you're trying to earn, learn, achieve, accomplish, or become, and you're hitting some roadblocks, well, this podcast could be a good place to talk about it. We had something really great happen on the show yesterday, and this is exactly my intention for it. I am in no way, shape, or form qualified to dispense any kind of advice about anything. But I do know that when you talk things through, they become easier. When you say things out loud, or when you hear them said out loud, or when you hear your story from somebody else's perspective, a lot of the time things can fall into place a little bit more easily. And it was my goal for the podcast that, well, I would take your messages, I would take your emails, I would take your communications with me, and we would talk about what was going on in your life on the air. And not only would you and I talk about it, but the other folks that listening could weigh in as well. And something awesome happened yesterday. A listener called Steven is facing a very difficult situation where his ex-wife is against a court order trying to move his children a couple 100 miles away. Stephen wants desperately to stay in his kids' lives. And, well, we talked about this on the show, and we talked about the fact that he said he doesn't have the resources right now to hire a lawyer and pursue this that way. And so many people weighed in. So many people said, hey, he might want to reach out to these folks. He might want to try this avenue. And that's really what this podcast is all about. I hope this is what it becomes. I hope this is what it is for all of us. I hope it's a place to share and discuss and help each other. I hope it's a place where we can get each other through. That was my intention for the podcast. It was not supposed to be a health and fitness thing. I did get asked by someone how I dropped a bunch of weight. They saw an old before and after picture on Instagram where there was about a 50-pound difference. I went from being a fairly jiggly fellow to being reasonably ripped and shredded. And he wanted to know how I did that. So we talked about the fitness program that I was on. I've emailed it to a bunch of you that have asked this. And the topic of intermittent fasting came up. And like I said, I didn't want to talk about this. I didn't want to do a fitness podcast. And a couple people have suggested to me that I do a separate podcast for fitness alone. No. You know how I said I'm not qualified to dispense advice? I'm really not qualified to dispense advice on that stuff. anything that you and I talk about that you decide to put into action, if you're in any way, shape, or form in doubt, check with your doctor. And in fact, I think you should probably check with your doctor before you undertake anything. But what we're talking about here is fairly basic stuff. The way I got into shape was, well, basically by eating less and moving more. It wasn't rocket science. It wasn't any kind of science. It was figuring out the number of calories I was burning in a day by just existing and trying to eat a little bit less than that. So my body tapped into its natural fat reserves, and I wound up losing about a pound a week over the course of the year. And when you see the before and after picture, it's noticeable because that's a year. That's a 50-pound weight loss. And so, my point is, I didn't do anything drastic. Now, we talked a little bit about intermittent fasting, about basically skipping breakfast. If you're new to this concept, it's essentially going for slightly longer periods without food. And there's been a lot made of the science behind intermittent fasting. There's a lot of people that will tell you there's these fancy hormonal benefits. There's a lot of people that will tell you that it spikes your body's natural growth hormone. So all of a sudden, if you're intermittent fasting and you are working out, you're going to start packing on muscle like you wouldn't believe. And I don't know if any of that's true. I have my doubts about it. But I liked the idea of intermittent fasting because I've never really been a breakfast guy. I love breakfast food. I love breakfast. The food that you eat traditionally in the morning: pancakes, eggs, bacon, toast, an omelet, coffee, something of that nature. It's some of the greatest food ever. But I always found when I had a big breakfast, I didn't feel like going and doing anything. I felt like going back to bed. And well, it was interesting because for many, many years, there were all sorts of doctors and physical trainers and folks of that nature, people that were experts in physiology and human anatomy that would tell you that if you didn't eat breakfast, oh man, your metabolism was going to slow to a crawl and you were going to be just a pre-diabetic mess. If you're not eating breakfast, you're missing out on the most important meal of the day. It's tantamount to suicide is what it is. That was the general thought about breakfast. And all of a sudden, intermittent fasting came along and people went, it's really good for you to do is to skip breakfast. Yeah, just drink some black coffee. That'll curb your appetite. And, don't eat breakfast and watch what a ripped, tone, shredded super athlete you become. Now, this is just indicative of the amount of contradictory information there is out there about health and fitness and why so many people can feel just totally shut down before they even start anything. All you got to do is Google a couple things and there's plenty of varying opinions out there that are going to confuse you. But for me, it's really simple. And I can only tell you what's worked for me. And what's worked for me is the time-honored tradition of calories in, calories out. You want to expend more than you consume, and by doing that, you're going to lose some weight. And I did the intermittent fasting thing a little bit. Not in a serious way, not in a, oh man, this is going to be a game changer kind of way, but in a way where it was like, you mean it's not the end of the world if I don't eat breakfast? Cool. Some of the time, I'm not going to eat breakfast. And, I think it helped me drop a couple of those 50 pounds I lost a couple of years ago. But we talked about intermittent fasting a little bit on the show, and it sparked an awful lot of questions. Now, there's all sorts of ways of doing this. There's all sorts of theories about the best way to do this, but I got an interesting email from Sylvia who said, I was interested to hear you talk about intermittent fasting. I've heard some people just eat one meal a day. Should I do that? Will it help me drop weight faster? Thank you for doing the podcast. If there's anywhere I can send you some money, let me know. I would gladly pay to subscribe. Well, thank you, Sylvia. I appreciate that. I do have to get more organized about all this stuff. I am an unemployed radio person, and I suppose at some stage in the game, the goal should be able to turn these podcasts that you and I are kind of taking part in together into something that I could use to eat and pay rent with. But I don't know what the best way to do that is. I was thinking of setting up a Patreon. A bunch of my radio buddies who have started podcasts on their own after coming to the end of the road in radio have done that, and they really like it. I think that's kind of a cool way of doing things just because it doesn't obligate you to pay anything to listen to the podcast. It allows you to kick in if you want to. So maybe I'll set that up. I don't know. But thank you. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Now, on to your question, Sylvia. Should you just eat one meal a day? I know a guy that did this, lost a whole bunch of weight by eating one meal a day. He took it very, very seriously. He was like, I'm only going to eat one meal a day. And he dropped all sorts of weight. He looked great. He felt great. I don't know what his doctor said about this, but here's the thing. If you eat one meal a day, your question was, will it help you lose weight faster? The answer is no, not really. Like I said, I believe, and this is not groundbreaking scientific stuff, I believe it's a matter of calories in and calories out. So if you eat one meal a day, let's say you're burning 2,000 calories by just going through your day and by existing. And by the way, if you missed the other shows we did where we talked about this, the great thing about burning calories is, well, your main calorie burn is just kind of come from your body's natural processes. You would burn through the majority of your calories lying completely still. You could burn probably somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 calories a day just by lying there in bed, depending on how big you were. Now, the question, will you lose weight faster if you just eat one meal a day? No. In fact, if you just eat one meal a day, you could wind up putting on weight. It depends how many calories are in that meal. Like I said, really it comes down to you want to burn more than you eat. And there's a couple different ways you can figure out how much you burn naturally and how you can adjust your calorie intake accordingly. This is a very simple way that I've broken it down, and it works for me. You want to eat somewhere between 10 and 12 calories per pound of your goal body weight. Meaning, if your goal is to weigh 180 pounds, well, you should be eating somewhere between 180 and 2,000 calories a day. Does that make sense? So, to answer your question, Sylvia, if you just eat one meal a day, it totally depends what's in that meal. If you have a goal, say you figure out that with all the running around you do, with all the exercise and maybe walking the dog and things of that nature that you do, you go through 2,000 calories a day and you want to lose weight. So you're eating 1,800 calories a day. You've got a calorie deficit of 200. Well, if you exceed those 1,800 calories in that one meal, which, by the way, it's pretty easy to do depending on where you're eating or what you're eating, then it's going to be the same as if you exceeded it throughout the course of the day. There's this notion, I think, that if you can go a really, really long time without putting food into your system, it's going to have some sort of scientific benefit. And look, it may or may not. I'm certainly not qualified to talk about this, but I kind of don't buy into any of that. Me personally, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. 1,800 calories is 1,800 calories, whether you're eating 2 meals of 900, whether you're eating 3 meals of, I don't know, what's 18 divided by 3, 600. So that's the thing. It's calories in, calories out. And if you choose to go the sort of extreme route of one meal a day, holding off all day long and eating your first and only meal as your evening meal, if that works for you, then maybe that's okay. You'd want to check with a doctor, and I genuinely don't know if that's safe or not. I know plenty of people that have done that, a couple that swear by it, a couple that are incredibly strict about it, but I am of the opinion that you should do whatever is sustainable and works for you. The best plan for you is the one that you're going to be able to stick to. The best exercise plan for you is the one that you're going to be able to stick to. So if you find something really boring or really difficult or really complicated, or you dread doing it, and it's not something that you feel like you can enjoy or get into long term, it's probably not the best move. For me, I find that, look, we kind of, I think all have developed these societal patterns with weight and what we eat. Meaning, it is not uncommon for someone in January to go, oh my gosh, I've been eating like a fiend since Thanksgiving hit in November. In fact, I did not skimp on the Halloween candy. So, since the end of October, I have been chowing down. I've put on a bit of a spare tire. I've packed on some pounds, and I got to do something about it because, well, summertime is coming up. I think that's actually... It's a cycle that everybody finds himself in, I think, but I think it's kind of a natural one as well. If you are being super strict with yourself all year long, if you are adhering to, diet and exercise plans for 9-10 months out of the year and being really militant with it, you're going to hit the point where you need a break. And taking a bit of a break around the holidays, it might not be a bad thing. Holidays are stressful. Holidays have a lot of food around. If you are tracking your macrobiotics, meaning if you're tracking your macronutrients rather, trying to keep a hold on how much protein and carbs and fat you're putting into yourself, well, that gets really difficult around the holidays. Who knows how many carbs are in grandma's sweet potato pie? You just know that you want to eat it. And you know what? At this point in the year, you probably earned it. So I don't think there's any real harm to loosening up a little bit around the holidays and getting right back at it sometime around January 1st. Or the early part of the year. And I think it's good to get back to things at the early part of the year. As much as it's a cliche to, on January 1st, declare that this is the year you're getting into shape, I think it's good to start then. Why? Because it's a long road. And the slower you take it, say you want to lose 20 pounds, 30 pounds by the time summer rolls around. Well, if you start in January and you go slow and easy on yourself and go for a gradual weight loss plan, if you're going for a smaller calorie deficit, 200 calories, 250 calories, as opposed to going like, all right, I'm going to cut 500-600 calories out of my diet every single day. Well, if you're going slow and being easier on yourself, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot easier to maintain. And there's study after study that proves that if you lose weight more slowly, you're more likely to keep it off. So when you talk about something like one meal a day, to me, that's kind of drastic. And I know a lot of people that get really mad at themselves if they can't adhere to a plan. They set themselves some sort of ridiculous plan. I've got one friend who swears by liquid diet. Starting January 1st, he only drinks protein shakes. And by the way, only drinking protein shakes, I don't think that's the best move because you want to get carbs. You want to get fats. Carbs are your friend in the gym. Carbs give you energy. And, well, the fats, they're a part of your body's natural processes. They help with your hormones. So if you're just eating constant protein shakes or protein supplements or whatever it is, I don't think that's very balanced. I don't think that's very sustainable. And I think you're going to come crashing off of that. As my friend will freely admit, he does. But I know a lot of people that set themselves these really kind of strict programs that they feel they have to rigidly adhere to. And I don't think that's the greatest way to do things because, well, it's easier to fall off and it's easier to be mad at yourself when you fall off if you promise yourself, I'm only going to eat one meal a day. So for me personally, I would kind of do that as we get to the end of, whatever fitness path we're on. Say you want to be in awesome shape for the summertime. 4th of July rolls around and you want to look and feel your best as you're out on the beach. You want to have a ripped, toned, shredded, single-digit body fat physique with a noticeable six-pack that you can parade around the swimming pool all summer long. Well, I think the time when you start doing things that are a little bit more outside the box, a little more extreme, is maybe as you're getting close to that. I would advise you, Sylvia, to go easy on yourself. Set up a small, reasonable calorie deficit that's easy to stick to. Maybe 200 calories, maybe 250 calories. And, if you don't manage to adhere to that every single day, no big whoop. You can make it up the next day. You can walk a little further. It's not crazy. It's easy, and it can be fun, and it can be sustainable, and it's less likely to result in some sort of crash. And as you get closer to, the time where you want to hit whatever goal it is you've set yourself, if you feel like you need to throw a little extra fuel on the fire, if you feel like now is the time to ramp things up a bit, then is the time that I would sort of start thinking about something that was a little more extreme and a little less sustainable. But there is no reason why you can't go easy on yourself and kind of cruise into your fitness goals, especially if you're thinking about it right now in January. If you have a goal of looking and feeling your best during the summertime, well, guess what? You're way ahead of the game because you're starting right now and you are giving yourself 6 months to do it as opposed to 3 months or a month or whatever the case may be. So, like I said, yeah, you could eat just one meal a day, but it's not going to make you lose weight any faster. It depends on how many calories are in that meal, I think. And I'm definitely not a doctor, definitely not anyone that is qualified to be speaking about fitness, but I do know that calories in, calories out, that's a law of physics. You can't get around that one. That applies to all of us for the most part. I mean, obviously, some people have conditions, some people have hormonal situations, some people might have some sort of situation with their digestion that can preclude them from that. But for the vast majority of us, calories in, calories out will be how we get from A to B with our goal of dropping a couple pounds. And the key is you're doing this stuff to feel good. You're doing this stuff to feel better about yourself. You're doing this stuff to feel better as you make your way in the world. And doing something that's kind of crazy and over the top that results in you feeling worse, especially if you're not able to stick to it, I wouldn't mess with it. And if you are going to do this sort of one meal a day thing that some people talk about, A, do your research, B, talk to your doctor, and C, maybe try it out every now and then. Try one day of the week going one meal. And you might go, oh, I really like that. That was easy. That was sustainable. That felt like something I could do 2 or 3 days out of the week. Maybe that's something I could do all the days of the week. Or you might do it once and go, oh, no, thank you very much. I need lunch. But whatever the case may be, you're way ahead of where you need to be because you're thinking about this in January. You're not thinking about this in June when you're trying to get in shape for July or whatever the case may be. So go slow, be consistent, be easy on yourself. If you have any questions, let me know. And by the way, I fell into this category. A big part of the reason why I decided to make a change in my life was not only the need to be more present and available with family, not only the need to experience some growth in my life, but I wanted to have a little bit more time to take care of myself when it came to health and fitness. And I wasn't getting that living the way I was for the last 5 or 6 years. So, I am right there with you. I would like to get in slightly better shape for the summertime, not because I have big plans to hit the beach, but because, I like that routine. I like that slow build up to some sort of a goal. So if you are starting a new fitness plan or the fitness plan we've talked about more seriously, I'm right here with you and we can do this together. If you have any questions, if there's any sticking points that you hit me up. I'll do my best to answer them. And if not, I've got some friends that work in health and fitness that will be only too happy to weigh in and give a more enlightened, studied perspective than mine. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for being a part of my radio family. As always, this time that you and I spent together, it's the best part of my day. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it all over again. Later.